Good afternoon. So I would like to understand a little bit more this idea of seeing through the eyes of Source, because in listening to you over the years, you have seemed to give unfailing kindness and patience to everyone who sits in front of you. And I find in my life, I often do feel kindness and love towards people, but many times I also feel irritation, all sorts of emotions. And what is it that you are bringing to this interaction that I could learn from, or what would be helpful to know from you about the kindness and patience?
Well, we're not wobbling. You see, the reason that anyone is not feeling and displaying love in any moment is because they've got it pinched off. They're in some sort of guarded place. They're wobbling. And so someone else, like in the example that you gave of yourself, might feel threatened. You might feel that you might wobble if you get engaged, or that something might go wrong. But when you're standing in a stable place, you just don't wobble. We're just more practiced at it. And you can be too. You can be too.
Mm-hmm.
Esther has been saying things to herself because every now and again something happens. Sometimes people just make mistakes that have big ramifications. And those big ramifications feel bigger than small ramifications. In other words, there's a momentum in it. And you'll have a knee-jerk response to it. But after a while, nothing's worth feeling bad even for a moment. That's really what it comes down to. We are unwilling to wobble. That's what you feel.
So if I'm feeling critical or...
You're already wobbling.
I'm already wobbling. So what effect is that having on me that's detrimental to me?
Well, nothing's too serious,
mm-hmm.
but if you really want something that you really don't believe, then there's an aggravation in that isn't good for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the most significant thing is it's something that you're practicing and continuing to perpetuate, so you're just going to get more and more and more
mm-hmm.
and more of it,
mm-hmm.
until eventually it sort of reaches critical mass where you just don't feel good most of the time,
mm-hmm.
or you're wobbling most of the time.
Right. So it's the sense of threat or some adverse situations, consequence, that would elicit the sense of criticalness or...
Every time there has ever been a mass murder or anything like that, if you could get to the heart of knowing the perpetrator of that, you would discover a whole lot of beating up on that person had taken place before they ever reached that place of retaliation. So the word retaliation is central to this conversation. It's that knee-jerk response. But instead of retaliation, let's call it law of attraction. Rest with that for a minute. Instead of saying, I had a knee-jerk response or I retaliated, it's law of attraction. I was vibrating there, and so that was the next logical step. Mm-hmm. If you see someone, we know this feels like a real extreme exaggeration of what you're talking about. We're going to work our way back
mm-hmm.
to exactly what you're asking for. So take a situation where something has really wobbled out of control and some terrible thing has happened. Someone walked into a school and shot a bunch of children. Well, that wobble didn't have to get that big. It didn't have to get that big. But most humans don't know how to soften that wobble. Instead, they want to demonize the shooter instead of love him. They want to lock up everyone who ever did anything even a little bit that they didn't like, rather than appreciate them and guide them. In other words, there's so much wobble that the community around them thinks it's just normal life behavior. And so in your society, there are so many of you who are trying to control behavior and not considering vibration or wobble. And we are here, we have agreed on this all day long here today. You have no control over your behavior if you have not some measure of control over your vibration, because law of attraction makes you out of control. That's why you yell at your kids when that's the last thing in the world that you want to do. You just got wobbling and wobbling and wobbling and wobbling and wobbling. You love them more than life itself. And yet, the wobble gets bigger. Are you following this a little bit?
Yes.
And
So is it possible, though, to discern without criticism? And the reason I ask is for my whole life, I've been thrown into leadership positions from a young age, and I found early on that I, in some ways, only saw the good in people, and I would ignore the obvious signs that maybe there were harmful motivations in a situation. And I find now that I have to be able to see if someone's coming from a place that might be a less than noble motivation within an organization, so that you don't allow a harmful momentum to develop because of that. So how do you observe and discern, but without being brought into this place of criticism and conflict?
well, you've set us up for the perfect response and the perfect ending of this gathering, because a woman said the other day, how do I get rid of doubt? And we said, you have to get rid of it before it starts. You do it before it starts. You do it before it starts. And so that's really what we want to bring all of this conversation around to understanding, is that when you are waking up in the morning and you're acknowledging that while you slept your momentum stopped, and you're deliberately finding subjects that you don't wobble on and focusing on them and allowing the momentum to become greater and greater, so that 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 days into that, you're really feeling the positive effects of your no longer introducing resistance into your own vibration. Well, now, if you could just start fresh like that and not have any relationships that already exist, the relationships that would come to you 30 days from today, once you've cleaned your vibration all up, would only be those things that are beneficial to you. But most of you aren't in a position where you can just not be in the leadership position that you're already in. You can't abandon your children or not go to work or whatever, and so you're going to rendezvous with the people that you've been so there has already been some momentum, that there's already momentum underway, and there's already some wobble. So the specific answer to the question is, train yourself so well to not cause a wobble that as you even see a wobble, you become unwilling to look at it. It really is looking away. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. It really is looking only at what you want to see. Today, no matter where I'm going, no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm doing it with, it is my dominant intent to look for what I want to see, to look for wobble-free things. And what happens is, little by little, those who wobble their way right out of your experience in one of two ways. Either they are, as you describe them to be, sort of set on something that doesn't match what you want, but you are no longer holding them in your experience by your attention to them. That's so big. You are no longer holding them in your experience by your attention to all that they are. You are finely tuning, you're looking at them, and you are only seeing the parts of them that they really want to be and the parts that you want to interface with. So one of two things will happen. Either their wobble will become less and less, or they will wobble right out of your experience altogether, you see. So this conversation is a bit backwards in this sense. It went like this. How can I discern what's going on in relationships so that I can make better choices, so that I don't include people that have negative potential in their experience? And our answer to you was the perfect answer. It will shift within them. But it sounded like the end that we were reaching for in that is to have better experiences, experiences that don't go wrong, where the whole motivation that we are wanting you to find is we want you to feel the goodness that is you under all conditions, even when someone decides that they're going to do their very best to show their badness to you. So the question is, how can I see the best in someone who isn't even trying?
Right.
They're not even trying. They're not even trying to be on time. They're not even trying to do the right thing. They're not even trying. How, Abraham, really? It's my job? It's my job? I have to do all the adjusting. Yeah, you do. You have to do all the adjusting. But don't start with the hard things. Start with the easy things. And before you know it, your life will reflect the adjustment that you've made. So if somebody's in your experience and there's something that you're finding unpleasant about them, oh, it's such a wonderful thing to stop and acknowledge, since everything is a reflection of something that's active in my vibration, then there's something in my vibration that I really don't want to be active in my vibration. So I'd like to deactivate it. Well, how do you deactivate something? You can't deactivate a thought because you're thinking about the thing that you're trying to deactivate, and that's why it's in your experience. So, but it does cause you to want to look for other things.
So I can see that in a one-on-one situation. So if I'm in a conflicted situation with my child, I really try to then relax into that.
Oh, it's easier with your children too because your desire factor is so great. You want to love them. You want so much to love them that it dominates within you.
But in a leadership position, you're not only responsible for how this one person is engaging with a group, but you have a whole group dynamic that you want to allow to raise up in terms of its positivity, its beneficialness in the world. And that's where it becomes complicated because it seems as if this one-on-one engagement that you talk about where you see the good and so forth may be at the expense of a more immediate situation where you're balancing the
well, here's
benefits
the thing, though.
of
That's
everyone.
That's a habit that a lot of people have that you don't have to have. That's the old squeaky wheel gets all the oil thing. That's there's one rascal that's causing a lot of ruckus, and you give all your attention while people are waiting who have more productive things to offer. And so you want to ask yourself, what is it about that that's making me feel like I need to address it? And what it is there is this human thing that you've come to believe that is a flawed premise that says, I will find the problem and I will eliminate it. And so, you never eliminate it. All you do is encourage it.
So in a way, you may notice this, but then you bring your attention back to the broader goodness of what may be happening,
And in time, what happens is the balance will start to tip for you, and you will find yourself feeling inspired to offer. Esther used to really worry because they were opening these gatherings to you all and not even knowing who you are or what you want or what you mean or what trouble you might bring. And after a while, Esther started saying, we never have to worry because Abraham knows who they are. And so that's the way you started this conversation.
Right. So it's coming back to this question of guardedness that if you're guarded, you're already starting from a wrong premise.
And you were guarded when you got there. That's the thing. You were guarded when you got there. And so first of all, focus in a way that you feel less and less guarded as you show up. And you'll see the dynamics of those meetings changing right away. Sometimes somebody just wants attention. Well, don't you want to give the person who wants attention attention? In other words, just because they want attention, does that make you immediately want to deprive them of that attention? Or don't you want to give them the attention that they seek? So give them the attention. Sometimes they have a real issue that they want to talk about. So listen to them. But you have enough understanding about, that to know what you do want, you have to know what you don't want. So if someone's offering a lot of problematic statements in the room, you might say, you are making so many good points. You are helping us to define what we are really wanting here. You are speaking the things that so many of us are feeling. I am pleased that you are able to articulate with such succinctness because we all are sort of thinking some of those things and thank you for putting it out there. And those are the very things that we're looking for solutions about. Really good, say to them. And sometimes that's all they want. If they are really truly argumentative and now you've turned your attention away from them and you don't turn it back, they won't come back. They won't come back unless you engage in argument with them. Then they'll be back. If they really want to argue and you will argue with them, or if they really want to debate and you will debate with them, every now and again Esther will have a meal with someone, and the thing that drives her the craziest, so don't do that if you ever have a meal with her, is when they try to teach Abraham stuff.